Well, welcome to our interview series with our Spokane GOP endorsed candidates. And we have with us today Sue Pederson, who is running for the state public lands commissioner position. Welcome, Sue, and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, MJ. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and you are also the Washington State Republican Party endorsed candidate. So congratulations on both of those endorsements. And I know you have other endorsements as well.
I do. They're just racking up here. Well, I am so pleased and humbled to get these endorsements from Spokane, which was a really thorough vetting process, probably the best in the state. Only Clark County came close to yours. And then the state party endorsement at 86% blew my mind and just makes me feel so incredibly motivated to do a good job and represent the state in this position.
Well, that's fabulous. Well, you're definitely a very worthy candidate, and I'm excited to, help others get to know you better and know about, your background. So let's start off by telling us about yourself, Sue, and your background and why you are running for this position.
Okay, so I grew up at a salmon hatchery on the Columbia River down in the Columbia Gorge in Skamania County. I had a wonderful childhood, lots of freedom to explore and learn about nature kind of on my own, play with those little baby salmon whenever I wanted. And then next door to the hatchery was the huge Gifford Pinchot National Forest, which was a thriving timber industry at that time. My friends were kids of loggers. We just lived outdoors. We were just surrounded with nature, working away. And um, I I ended up becoming a biologist because of my love of nature. And I started out on fisheries research projects. I have two older sisters who were in college at the time. My parents were not wealthy. My dad worked at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service at hatcheries for 40 years, and we had to live at the hatchery. Um, my sisters were in college, and it was my turn. We were very close together in age, and I had to work my way through college. It actually took me 9 years, and I loved it because I had a chance to do temporary research projects at most of the Columbia and Snake River dams on those rivers, the hydropower projects. We were tracking adult salmon. We would put radio tags in those salmon and follow them with radio telemetry as they approached the dam and went up over the ladder. Maybe they fell back again, tried again. And we would even track them between dams. It was the most amazing,
Wow.
amazing job. I loved it. And it allowed me to pay for college while I was working and going to college. It was fabulous. I learned a lot about dams and salmon migration at dams. Uh, I next worked at a private company in Seattle that manufactured sonar equipment to study juvenile salmon going downstream over the dam. So I did that for many years too. And so I really appreciate the time I had to study dams and salmon. Uh, Later, I became a habitat manager for the State Department of Fisheries. I would review forest practices, permitting, and uh, salmon stream permits what were they called? Hydraulic permit approvals, hydraulic project approvals. And my permitting experience led me eventually. I did other things too. I was a harvest manager for Puget Sound Pursane and Gillnet fisheries for a while for the State Department of Fisheries. I I ended up working at Seattle City Light, and I was a senior environmental analyst there. They first put me to work managing 12 agency permits for building a new hydropower project. That construction could have been the last hydropower project built in Washington, I don't know, but uh, I I took care of all the permitting, even all the way up to the Federal Energy Commission. And that was a wonderful experience for me. Later on, about halfway between being a senior environmental analyst and retiring, I switched to being a senior power analyst. I just made a lateral transfer over to that department, and that was all about power generation, how to balance your generation to respond to your ever-changing load. I mean, this is what's missing from the recent discussion about taking out natural gas.
Mhm.
I am super concerned about natural gas being phased out for residential use especially, but also for power generation. The thing, I'm getting off on a tangent here, I apologize, but the thing that people don't realize, and I fault electrical engineers because they don't toot their own horn. Running a power grid is incredibly complex. They just make it look easy, but it's not, because people turn their lights on whenever they want. You know, we've had that luxury forever. You want your lights on, you turn them on.
I did it just a second ago, didn't I?
They're- the power companies are starting to offer incentives for people to do their laundry at night, for example. They're trying to manage for load following is the term. They're trying to manage for that and get people to cooperate so that you use your power at certain times.
Yeah,
That's foreign to us. We've always been able to use our electricity whenever we want.
yeah,
A lot of pressures on the grid now are these data server places. I'm not using the right term. Uh, Server farms, I think they're
yeah,
called. Those
yeah,
use a huge amount of electricity. A lot of it is just to cool the air because they generate a lot of heat. So I don't know. Why don't we just take that heat from the server farms and connect it to people's homes? This this is how my brain works. I
love it. Yes.
try to, control that a little bit, but I'm always thinking of what can we do better?
Yeah.
How can we just have a big picture view of what we do instead of just we've I earned a master's degree in public administration partway through my career. And I I think that experience was really good for me to think about and analyze, understand how lately almost all agencies, even the science realm, people just keep getting narrower and narrower in their focus. Maybe because we have this information technology explosion, we just may be overloaded with information in all different kinds of ways. But people are tending to just look
Mm.
tighter and tighter into their one specialization. I really think that's going too far. I think we really need to cross pollinate our knowledge and our ideas. So let me try to tone that down to a salient remark here. I I think about our forests. I was totally alarmed in 2014 to see fires. I grew up with forest fires. They're very common. You
Right.
know, you can't really stop them, but you can try to manage them. Uh, these white smoke fires, 2014 was the first time in my life I saw forest fires where the smoke was white and opaque. You couldn't see through it, and it hung around for days on end. And I thought, this is something different. This is when I first started thinking about what can I do to shed a light on this? And so since 2016, when I ran for state senate out of Grace Harbor, uh, LD 19, I have just been really trying to figure out why are we having white smoke fires? What has changed? And So I have a pretty good understanding about it now, and I'm pleased that things are happening. Our state legislature has passed unanimously a bill called House Bill 1168 in 2021. I like to think I had a little bit to do with House Bill 1168 because it was it was drawn up and passed unanimously right after I ran for this position in 2020. So I had the chance to have 8 debates with the incumbent. She's now leaving the seat. This is Hillary Franz, a Democrat. She's leaving the seat to run now for Congress in the 6th district. But she's the only incumbent at the statewide level who agreed to more than one debate. So she agreed to have 8 debates with me. And I quickly learned that she was really all in on firefighting. She just wanted to be able to fight these fires, and that made sense. But I kept telling her, well, that's all good, but you have to start preventing them because we were burning tens of millions of acres. That is huge. It's
Yeah.
such a huge problem. And there's the firefighters, these fires are twice as hot as the fires I experienced when I was young.
Wow.
They it's because uh I feel like I'm just really pouring
You're
it on here,
you're
but
great.
I I rarely get a chance to talk more than 2 minutes. The For over 100 years, maybe 150 years, Washington, like many places in the world, the settlers came here. They saw that we had fabulous trees and forests, so they started cutting trees for lumber. Very practical thing to do. And, they were good stewards. They made mistakes. Back in the day, they used to clog up streams with logs and then try to carry them down the stream. They ran equipment in spawning beds for salmon. You know,
Yeah.
they clear cut steep slopes and caused terrible erosion. They made mistakes.
Right.
So I think we made a huge mistake ourselves when we said, well, we need old growth forests. The belief then was that northern spotted owls, which had been listed as threatened. They were listed as threatened federally, but as endangered on a state level. We said, well, they need old growth forest, so we're just going to let the forest grow bigger and older. And the trouble with that was that we didn't do any kind of transition. And the trees that were planted for harvest many years prior, they've now had 35 years to grow even bigger and bigger and bigger. That the logging industry would plan for a tree to be harvested when it stopped growing so fast. It grows pretty fast, 60 to 80 years, and then the growth rate slows down. So they figured out, well, we'll just cut them at the peak of their growth rate, and then we make the most of the land that we're farming. So the trees we have now were planted to be harvested maybe even 35 years ago, or somewhere in that time frame. So they're crowded,
Wow.
they're big, they're really big. I look at the trees nowadays and I think I never saw trees this big. But the problem is they're too close together. So they're competing for water, for sunlight, for space. And that leads to diseases because they're not as healthy. And I also learned that foresters have a rule of thumb, which I find totally interesting, just a general way of describing water use in trees. So their rule of thumb says approximately 10 gallons of water are being used by a tree to stay healthy. 10 gallons for every inch diameter of the trunk.
Wow.
You measure the trunk about 4 feet off the ground. That diameter, so if it's 30 inches across, 4 feet off the ground, a 30-inch diameter tree it's going to need about 300 gallons of water just to stay alive and healthy.
And
And
that's in what time frame?
at one time.
Like, so for its like lifespan or for
No, no.
a day?
in one moment.
Oh, in one moment.
Remember, it's a rule of thumb,
Yeah, yeah,
so it's general.
yeah.
But every tree that you look at that's alive and healthy is using about 10 gallons of water for every inch of its trunk diameter.
Wow.
So I look at the trees and I think, holy moly, that's a lot of water. And if the trees are holding that water to stay alive, that means that water's not going in the ground. It's not feeding stream flows. We worry about stream flows,
Yeah.
and people are convinced stream flows are low due to climate change. But I'm thinking, I think maybe our forest mismanagement might have to do with
Mm,
water cycle. The water cycle is hugely important in Washington state. That's why we have all this developed hydropower. And and we're not managing any of it very well. The salmon numbers are low. People want to take out the hydropower dams, which is like the most shocking thing to me. I cannot even imagine thinking that.
yeah.
And the hydropower industry in particular, they know how ridiculous that is. And people have talked about taking the dams for decades. And the power industry always said, they're never going to do that. That's the stupidest thing ever. And so they ignored this idea for ages. And now the idea is growing in popularity. And I just think that's about the biggest mistake we could make, especially when you're also trying to get rid of natural gas.
Yeah.
People heat their homes with natural gas.
Yep.
They're, right now they're saying, okay, they're not going to have any new natural gas service to residences, but they have a plan to stop it altogether.
Yeah.
Well, think about natural gas. It's just it's so important in people's homes.
Oh,
Heat,
yeah.
hot water, cooking.
Hmm.
People don't know how extreme this idea is. And is it just gonna make it so people can't afford to
Right.
change out their furnace to electric? And even if they do, the electric grid is gonna suffer. I don't see anybody planning to amp up the electrical grid with other new resources. In fact, they want to take out hydropower, which is
Yeah.
about 60% of our
It,
power.
it seems
It's
like such
so,
common sense.
it's so ridiculous. I don't know how to
Right.
speak up loudly
Yeah.
enough.
So Sue,
But
I love this because well, and I'm a farmer's daughter. I grew up on a farm. So this, and my dad had he just sold it, but he had 100 acres where two creeks came together in
oh yeah.
northeastern Oregon and the salmon spawned. So we've watched that for
Oh,
30 years and I love this. I mean, I just eat this up.
I want to comment on that. I totally believe that property owners are the best stewards of land. They really are. And I think we've kind of adopted this view that in the old days, people used to make mistakes, like
Right.
really big
Dredge.
mistakes. Well, we did make big mistakes. We dumped toxic waste in streams. We had a love canal that caught on fire. I mean, we had people dumping garbage and not
Yeah.
really making much of an effort to take care of the environment. So that's what the 70s was all about. That's when we had the EPA and all these the Endangered Species Act, all these movements to make people aware that you have to take care of the environment. Well, that was a long time ago, 50 years ago, more. And I so believe that people are the best judges of what to do. They're practical. They care. I mean, so many people care about the environment, fish and wildlife, and they try to do the right things.
Yeah.
So we don't need this burgeoning government to just keep, telling people what to do. They already know what to do. And the government just charges a lot of money to tell them what to do. I'm just so done with it. We've allowed the pendulum to swing way over here, and we need to bring it back to the middle. We need to be reasonable about land use. We need to talk to each other, have, a good understanding between the public and the government on what are we doing here.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at on.
That's why you're running. Yeah, I can
That's
hear the
why I'm
passion in
running.
you. Oh my goodness. So,
Exactly why I'm running.
yeah.
'Cause
So what's
I'm
your,
retired. I'm retired. I could just,
yeah, you don't need
I could
this.
just spend every day eating chocolates and sitting on the beach. But I care so much about Washington. My family immigrated here in the 1890s.
Mm,
I have generations of family. My uncles were all hunters and truck drivers. And, I have lived such a wonderful life and I want to give back.
yeah. Yeah, well, that's what's so great about you. I love this is you are, you care a lot. You're not a career politician. You really have
Oh, thank
feel
you.
called to get in here and you see there's things that aren't working right. You can observe with your eyes. You understand it with your experience in a level that I couldn't even come close to
Uh,
understanding, which I so
uh,
appreciate.
I
I love
I
that.
feel
So
lucky. I feel
here,
lucky.
yeah, well, and we're fortunate to have somebody like you that, is burdened, wants to take this on because it truly is a service to the people. So what a lot of people don't understand the role of this office, Sue. So what do you see is your primary role in this office and what are maybe some things that you hope to accomplish?
Well, the Commissioner of Public Lands, interestingly, this job was created in our state constitution in 1889. Back then, the early settlers, they recognized that our state is hugely blessed with natural resources, whether it's our forests, our fields, our agricultural lands, mining, all kinds of wonderful, and I think it includes the hydropower. Our history is full of mm, taking advantage, taking advantage of our natural resources, bringing stewardship, but also benefits to the people. I don't think it's a crime to be a human being who uses natural resources to benefit our population, especially when we have so many renewable, clean resources. And oddly, hydropower was left out of that list. Back in, I think it was 1990, we had, I keep getting off track. Let me get back to Commissioner of Public Lands. Um, so the commissioner is supposed to earn revenues from the natural resources to fund particularly schools, but also other public institutions like libraries, mm, hospitals, maybe. The focus has changed since 1889, where more and more private land has replaced public lands, and only 12% of Washington is public lands. Contrast that with about 28% federal lands.
Hmm.
Anyway, the commissioner is supposed to earn revenues. That's her main job. And nowadays, the incumbent, Hillary France, she's getting sued by environmental groups, nonprofits. She's getting sued by them not to log parcels that belong to the state that would be used to earn revenues for schools.
Mm.
These nonprofits are just suing her to not log. And of course, since I just went on that big spiel about forestry management in particular, that they're on the wrong track. I'm sure they have good intentions, but you can't get there from here. You have to do things differently. If you want old growth forests or legacy forests, they're calling them, that's going to require some planning, and you can't just stop logging. We've learned from the fires that's not a solution. We can't do it. So I I will take it upon myself to try to educate the whole state, in fact, about land management on agricultural lands and forests. And
Mhm.
Washington, I need to educate them about Washington. It seems like they don't know. So that's going to be a big push for me.
Wow.
A big responsibility of the commissioner, is to run the Department of Natural Resources. And that agency is quite large. There's about 1,700 full-time employees plus 400 more during fire season, because the DNR is the primary firefighting agency in Washington. They take the lead, whether it's state lands, federal lands, private lands, tribal lands. The DNR is the point of communication. When a fire starts, they're supposed to be notified, and then they arrange for the firefighting crews, however many it takes, wherever they might be from, even BC or across the country. So the DNR has two very important functions. One is fighting fires, and they've been really struggling with that lately.
My goodness.
And then the other is raising revenues for schools. And you probably know that our state constitution, unlike any others in the whole country, our paramount
Oh,
duty
yes.
is to provide education for all students. So that it's a big job. It's a very important job, and I take that very seriously. So
Yeah.
I'm ready to just get in there. I'm really good at asking questions.
So then
That's why I was able to have a really interesting career. I just ask questions.
that's fabulous. And I relate to that. And sometimes people don't like that I ask so many questions
Yeah,
because I'm like, well, wait a second. That
yeah.
doesn't, I'm not understanding this. It doesn't
You
quite
just
work that way.
you just need to know.
I know. Right. Right.
Yeah.
So your main role is, earning a profit off that public land, but then also managing, overseeing the Department of Natural Resources. And that includes, of course, the management of forests because of, okay. Am
Yeah,
I summing that
exactly.
up correctly? Okay,
Yeah, you're doing a good job.
good.
Thank you for that nice
Yeah.
summary.
Well, yeah, no, it's fascinating. And I know, over here in Spokane, of course, our summers, especially the last 4, 6,
I know.
years, like all of August is just,
Yeah.
I mean, one time I came down Sunset Hill and it was just this line of this thick brown smoke. And I think it was kind of from the Okanagan area
Was
or, more west of here.
Mhm.
And I just never remembered, having that around Spokane.
That's what my response was. What is this? This is not normal. And I
Yeah.
refuse to make it the new normal. I just won't go there.
Amen to that.
I really think we've got to open our eyes and say, oh, well, what we've been doing isn't working. So
Right.
there's something
Absolutely.
different.
Well, and you're making a whole lot of common sense, to me, Sue, and that's what's so great about you.
Yeah.
You've talked either, I had other questions, but I think you talked about a lot of them. Any other final comments that you would like to share with our voters? It's so important. I didn't say this at the beginning, but the ballots drop next week. We
Yeah.
have a very important election in
Mhm.
August. It's our primary. You are on that ballot. And so it's critical that people vote to get
Yes,
you through to that
yes,
general election and
yes.
to give you a chance to get voted in as this position, which we need you in. So what are your final comments to voters? Why you over the other people that are running?
Well, it's hard to predict what'll happen in the primary, but there's a lot of talk about the 5 Democrats splitting their votes so much that maybe the 2 Republicans will prevail. It's possible we could get 2 Republicans winning the primary. So I don't know my opponent very much. I've met her only once really in person, and I I I don't know enough about her really to say much, but I do know she has a lot of money, and I'm being criticized for not having very much at all. I'm operating on a shoestring because I care about the people of this state, and they're already struggling to buy their groceries. I don't want to ask people for money. I've been adamant about getting minimal money to just buy my signs and my flyers and stuff. I that's how I want to be. That's who I am. But I'm at a point now where I absolutely have to get a little bit of money because people are saying I'm not a viable candidate because I don't have as much money as all the other candidates in this race are coming from public office. They've all been elected officials banking their war chests for years. So there's hundreds of thousands of dollars in every candidate's pot, except mine. I'm running on tens of thousands. And it's good because I did this 4 years ago pretty much by myself, and I'm doing it again. And I have a lot of skills. So I can do my own emails, I can do my letters, I can, design my signs. Just try to do it all. I'm retired, so I have a lot of time. I'm a widow, so it's just me. My kids are successfully grown up and launched. So I have a lot of time, and that I'm happy to provide. I just could use a little more money. So if people could go to my website, there's a donate button on there, and I would be thrilled if you give me $5. Every little bit will help me because really I don't spend much. My opponent came into this, Jamie Herrera Butler came into this race in October with $250,000. And before we even got to the state convention in April, she'd already spent 140,000. So I don't have much, but I don't spend much either. So I think I'm a good investment. I hope.
Yeah. What's your website, Sue?
It's citizens, plural, citizens, number 4, Sue.com. Citizens4Sue.com.
Okay. Well, you heard it here. This is Sue needs your help, and we need her as our public land or commissioner of public lands. You are a great candidate, Sue, and obviously very
Thank you.
passionate and obviously feel called to this. You're not a career politician. And, we're really seeing the difference of that, in a lot of our candidates. And we're seeing this
Yes,
is a common story, not just in your race.
we have some really good candidates. I'm excited
Yeah.
for the party.
I'm
It's
excited for our state.
really nice.
I think we have an
Thank
amazing
you.
opportunity to
Yes,
really change the trajectory of our state. And we do
absolutely.
care about our resources, unlike what, maybe
And
the
our
other side will
people,
tell us,
we
right?
care about our people. We don't
Yes.
want them to freeze in the winter.
Right,
You
absolutely. And have enough, be able to turn on the electricity or the air conditioning so you're not, baking in your apartment for the elderly when it's 105 degrees. I mean, we
know?
care about those things. So
Absolutely,
yeah,
we do. That's
yeah,
huge. That is enormous. So
yeah. Well, thank you, Sue, for
thank
taking the
you.
time. I hope we get to chat later. And
Me too.
again, go to Sue for the number 4 Pederson. It's with a D
Yeah,
dot
thank you.
com, correct? Dot
Well,
com.
my website is just Citizens for
Oh,
Sue. It doesn't have dot
citizensforsue.com.
com. Yes.
Okay. All
Thank
right. Thank
you.
you, Sue, for your time today and blessings.
Blessings on you, my dear. All right. Thank you.